When a 42-year-old married man ran off to Montana with a married woman, friends and family called it a midlife crisis. When he disappeared just a year later, friends and family called that a homicide. The case went unsolved for 15 years, until a Civil War buff found more than military memorabilia in the grounds near Gettysburg. Truck about 60 miles away in Reisterstown, Maryland. It was in a grocery store parking lot. Melvin's checkbook and .22 caliber rifle were still inside the truck, so the motive wasn't robbery.
The truck was left windows partially down, keys in the ignition. I believe some of Melvin's belongings were still located in the truck. Other than that, the truck was in fine condition except for some marks in the back of the bed of the pickup truck.
And the truck radio was tuned to a rock music station.
Melvin Snyder never listened to rock music.
Melvin Snyder was well known in his small town. Just a year earlier, Melvin had an affair with a married woman, Teresa Harshman, whom he knew from square dancing. Melvin and Teresa left their jobs and families behind and fled to Montana. Melvin's wife Joanne and Teresa's husband Ron took the opportunity to get better acquainted too.
Mr. Harshman and Mrs. Snyder struck up a relationship and were intimate with one another.
But after only 3 weeks, Melvin and Teresa decided they had made a mistake and moved back home.
Gentlemen, change partners across from where you are. Change partners and swing her.
However, in this recent disappearance, neither Teresa Harshman nor her husband Ron knew of Melvin's whereabouts. And the bank reported no activity on any of Melvin's credit cards.
He had a young son. He was early 20s. And this wasn't the kind of man that would just run in a local landfill. They believed they had found a hand, and that was studied forensically. Of course, it was determined that it wasn't a human hand. They believed that it was perhaps animal, maybe a bear, but it wasn't Melvin Snyder's hand.
The only lead in the case was from a neighbor who said he saw a brown pickup truck near Melvin's home on the day he disappeared. It was similar to the truck Ron Harshman owned. Ron's wife and Melvin Snyder once had an affair.
Whether it was Harshman's truck or not, I don't know. We don't know.
Police discovered that Harshman had purchased a .25 caliber handgun just a few weeks before Melvin's disappearance. Coincidentally, a .25 caliber shell casing was discovered in Melvin's barn on the day he disappeared. Police searched Harshman's home and found ammunition for a .25 caliber weapon, but no gun.
I asked him where the gun was, and he said, "You'll have to ask Teresa. She's the one who took the gun, she liked it, and she took it." So when we asked her, she said, "No, that's a lie. I don't even like guns. I don't know anything about the gun."
During their investigation, police also learned that Ron Harshman and Melvin Snyder once had an unpleasant confrontation over the affair Melvin was having with Ron's wife.
He learned that Mr. Snyder was coming to his home to pick up his wife, and he crashed his car into him.
He had a gun with him at that point, shot at him for me to stop interfering in his life, both his social life and with his co-workers. I explained to him that I was an investigator and that all he had to do was to take a polygraph test, and I would personally apologize to everyone, including his co-workers.
But that was an offer he didn't care to accept.
We had no body, we had no actual gun. We knew what the past history was between Ron Harshman and Melvin Snyder. And common sense will tell you that, yeah, he has good reason to want to kill Melvin Snyder. He's the only person that we know of that ever wanted to harm Melvin, but that doesn't prove it in a court of law.
Before his disappearance, Melvin Snyder told friends that he was afraid of Ron Harshman because Ron was still angry about the affair he had with his wife.
I always have a strange feeling about the fact that he, in essence, had predicted something like this was going to happen.
For the next 15 years, the case...
Grass, and we're not sure of the exact area. But in this case, being the fact that it's a murder, I'm willing to try any idea, and it was worth a shot to do.
Police found help in nearby Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. Don Hinks was known in these parts as a retailer who sells metal detector equipment. These metal detectors were often used to unearth military artifacts.
Now, when I went out and found 3 French and Indian War cannonballs in one hole on the Braddock campaign, that probably gave me a bigger high than this .25 caliber automatic shell casing.
But Hinks and several of his colleagues were happy to do what they could, despite the fact Harshman's farm was several hundred acres.
But there was so much trash out there, so much farm equipment. It's the place where they would throw the garbage along with the tin foil and the toothpaste tubes, and all the junk went out there. So the challenge was working through 130 years of trash and picking up the little single .25 caliber automatic shell casing that we were looking for.
Modern metal detectors use computer processors to measure levels of conductivity, which enables them to identify the type of metal and the depth of an object underground.
They're basically computers that can pretty well tell you what's down there, how deep it is, does everything but dig for you today.
Hinks and his team found many shell casings, but none that were .25 caliber. Then, Hinks got a signal near a clothesline post.
In about 20 minutes, I got a signal that was in the proper reading range as far as the detector was concerned for a shell casing, and it went down, so we cut a little plug, turned it over, and there, sitting right in the plug, was a .25 caliber shell casing stuck to the bottom. When you look at it and you see the patina on it, you know it's not a freshly buried object.
My first thought was, this is going to be too good to be true. This can't be the one that he actually fired.
Investigators hoped that after 15 years in the ground, the shell could still be tested. Years after Melvin Snyder's disappearance, investigators found a .25 caliber shell casing several inches beneath the soil on Ron Harshman's farm. It was the same caliber and made by the same manufacturer as the shell casing found in Melvin's barn. When someone pulls the trigger of a gun, there's a mini explosion inside. The bullet goes through the barrel. The shell casing is forced backwards, coming into contact with the breech face before it is ejected. The breech face in any gun has unique and distinctive marks from the manufacturing process.
It's subjected to several milling and finishing processes which cause small microscopic imperfections to be imparted to the surface.
With Melvin's body, he put his motorcycle in the back of Melvin's truck, which created the damage found in the bed of the truck. Harshman then abandoned Melvin's truck 60 miles away in Maryland and drove his motorcycle home.
What did he do with the body? The body, after 19 years, has not been found. Carefully, he must have planned where he was going to take the body, how he was going to dispose of the body.
During police questioning, Joanne Snyder admitted that she told Ron Harshman that Melvin would be home alone that day. But prosecutors had no proof she had any prior knowledge of the murder.
I think Joanne had some involvement in this case. Now, I'm not sure whether or not that was done intentionally or if she was being used by Ron Harshman and didn't realize she was setting Melvin up.
Ron Harshman pled not guilty. Prosecutors knew that trying a case with only one piece of forensic evidence would be difficult.
With you sooner or later.